Hi friends, I welcome you back to Electricity Market in India, and today we are starting a power management series which is divided into three parts, part 1, part 2 and part 3. And here we will understand piece by piece how power procurement is done, how the tariff of power is determined, and finally we will learn how power is scheduled. Now this is an attempt by me to break up the whole power structure into its components so that it gets easy to understand, and because of the paucity of time I have restricted these three main agenda into three presentations so that it's easy to understand, easy to learn, and in case you have any doubt you can just drop me in the comment box and I would try to answer. Now, before we begin this presentation, I would like to thank many of my colleagues who helped me in making these presentation and providing the content. So a big thank to all of them. And those who are new, I would like request you all to subscribe to this channel and share it with your friends, college and universities. And my only aim is to bridge the skill gap which is present in India's power sector today. And in case any person who sees this presentation and can increase their knowledge level so that they can implement it in their work, I would consider it as a job well done for me. So let's begin today's presentation, and this is Power Management Series Part 1, and today we will talk about how power procurement is done. So one more point which I missed, which I would like to say, is that I have updated few of the presentations as a uh, certificate training course in some of the channels. So I've given the links in the comment box. And in case after seeing these presentations you want to get a certificate on this course, you can apply to that course. You see the presentations there again. There are a lot of quiz and exercise papers in those links, and you just get your certificate and you can send me in your reply mail. I will be very happy in case you complete your course there. So let's begin today's presentation without wasting any more time. So before understanding power procurement, we have to understand that the genesis of uh, power procurement has come from Electricity Act 2003. So what Electricity Act 2003 did was it mainly delicensed the process of generation. So anyone can, after 2003, anyone can put up the power plant in any part of India, and they don't need any license for doing that. They just need to adhere to certain rules and regulations, and they can do that. Next is it developed a multi-buyer and multi-seller framework in power. Earlier, the consumers were not having any choice of um, going for any kind of power producer selection and all. So after Electricity Act, a lot of things got deregulated, and the whole structure of the market changed. It also introduced tariff-based competitive bidding for procurement of power, which we'll discuss more into details in this series. So earlier, most of the power procurement by the discoms was done through MOU routes, and which was not very competitive in nature. So Electricity Act made it a mandatory to procure power through competitive bidding route, be it long-term power, be it medium-term, be it short-term. Also, it allowed non-discriminatory open access, which now you all know that what open access means. I have a full-fledged presentation on that. But what it typically means is that you can choose your power supplier of your choice. It also made it mandatory for the states to have the state electricity regulatory commissions, and few of the territories and states to have joint electricity regulatory commissions, JERCs. So to basically the aim of the SERCs is to uh, create the regulation for the states and to give any kind of judgment on any dispute or arbitration which comes under their prerogative. Also, it helped in the development of National Electricity Policy, which came in 2005, and National Tariff Policy, which came in 2016. This is again a well-known slide which we have used many a times in our earlier presentation. And here I generally always give a brief of how the structure of Indian power market is, how the policy making is done, regulators play their part, system operators play their role, generation takes care by CTU, STUs and the private central generating stations, state generating stations and the private licensees. Then you have the transmission, distribution and the markets and the renewable energies being currently procured through REC and renewable purchase obligations, and you have energy efficiency segment which is being catered by the ESERTs and the energy efficiency targets. Now for today's presentation we will restrict ourselves on power procurement, which is basically done currently at the distribution level. So the discoms have the obligation to procure power in today's market. They will procure it and they will further distribute it. So we'll see how the power procurement is done by the discoms in today's now, before going to that, we will also see a few slides on the basic facts which we have currently. As you can see in this presentation, that overall throughout our independence and before that, the whole power procurement was mainly done on the thermal part, and still today, thermal have the largest market share of 63% in the total generation mix, which is being fastly taken over by the renewable energy segment, which is fast catching up. And 10 years back, it was like 7 or 8%, which is now currently 22%. And hydro has maintained its 13% kind of market share, and nuclear is very negligible, like 2%. So if you can see in this slide, wherever the total India's power energy mix, the thermal constitutes almost 227 gigawatts out of the total installed capacity of 360 gigawatts. And if you see the sector-wise generation split, the private sector holds 47% of the total generation, and the central government holds 24%, where you have the generating units of NTPC, NHPC, NEEPCO, NPCIL. And if you see the state generating stations, they generate around 29% of the total pie of the 100% generation. Going into details, we have seen that what we can see is that the installed hydro capacity has fallen from 23%, which was there in FY20, to has fallen down to like 13% by July 2019. So overall, that it has been a installed hydro capacity has actually not fallen down in absolute terms, but the percentage of the hydro in the total pie has reduced from 23% to 13%. Similarly, the renewable generation, which is solar and wind, has increased its presence from 10% in FY10 to 22% by FY19. So it's like they have increased 120% on absolute terms. So increase in renewable power generation is mainly from solar and wind. As you can see that earlier it was 22, earlier it was just 10%, which I was explaining in the previous slide, which is now currently 22% of the total energy mix. Thermal is almost constant. It was earlier also 64%, which is currently at 63%. Hydro has come down from 23% to 13%. Similar to the earlier slide, now we see the power supply position in India. And we have seen that we can see that India has done fairly a very good work over the last 10 years on power procurement and power generation, as the energy deficit has come down from the earlier 10.1% to now it's like 0.6%. And similarly, the peak demand has also come down from the 12.7% deficit to 0.8%. So fairly, we are now in a state where we can say that we have no load sheddings, and there is hardly any deficit left. So we have equal generation and equal consumption. We are in a state of equilibrium, and we have to give credit to our system operators, the system planners, and the schedulers, and the generating units who runs 24 into 7 to maintain grid availability and power availability throughout the country. And it's a large country, and to maintain 24 into 7 50 hertz of frequency and continuous supply of this much power requires a lot of efforts and lot of coordination among all the agencies. So now we will see in Indian power market structure what are the various ways of power procurement by the discoms. So discoms can either do power procurement through four mechanism. It could be long-term contracts with the generators, it could be medium-term contracts, and it can be short-term contracts. Now under short-term contracts of power procurement, it can be a bilateral contract or it can be through power exchange. Now under long-term contract, typically the duration of the contracts are between 7 years to 25 years. And for once you have the long-term contract signed with any generator, be it thermal, hydro, wind or solar, then you have to apply for long-term open access, which is typically available between 7 to 25 years. Now, if you are signing a medium-term contract with any generator, the typical contract duration is between 1 year to 5 years, and then you apply for medium-term open access, which ranges from 3 months to 5 years. Under short-term bilateral contracts, it can be the duration of the contract is up to 1 year, and the you apply for short-term open access, which has which lasts for 3 months, is the duration of the STOA. Now, under the short-term power exchange, where you do the bidding on a day-ahead market, and here the corridor availability and open access is for 1 day. And you can also do term ahead market under power exchange, where you schedule your power on a week ahead basis, and here the transmission availability is on a weekly basis, which is on first come first serve or on a day ahead basis. Also you have a real-time balancing mechanism, which is called deviation settlement mechanism, also known as unscheduled interchange, which is used for settling the deviation from the schedule. So now you understand that any discom can sign long-term contracts, medium-term contracts, short-term bilateral contracts, and short-term power exchange. So there are four ways of power procurement available for any discom, and you have a DSM mechanism for grid balancing. Now you need to have transmission corridor priority. Now, if you are a state, for example, you are a state of Madhya Pradesh, there, and you are procuring power from various generators across India, then you need to also have in mind the transmission corridor priorities. So, when if there is any congestion or if there is any load shedding, then the priority of long-term power procurement is the highest. So it will not be curtailed. It will be the last one to be curtailed. The power which is flowing under long-term contracts and long-term open access have the highest priority. The next is the medium term, then short term. Under short term, the day ahead contingency, day ahead market and the contingency market, which is on the same day scheduling, has the lowest priority. So in the case of curtailment, it will be curtailed first. Second would be the short term power exchange power, which is on a day ahead basis, and then the short term advance reservation or FCFS, which is also called the week ahead market. So the day ahead contingency, where you bid for the same day, has the lowest priority. Then your day ahead market, which is the under power exchange. Then again under the advance reservation or first come first serve or the bilateral, it has the third priority. Fourth is medium term, and the final one is the long term. So as a planner of the power procurement for any state, you need to keep the priority in mind for proper planning of the capacity. So this is the slide which shows the percentage of the power procurement under various avenues which we have currently. As you can see that 93% power is procured in India under long term, which is you can see the majority of the total pie chart. Almost 5% of power is traded under short-term bilateral market, which is also known as short-term over-the-counter market. The power exchange is consists of 3% of the total market share. So total we have like 98% under long term, then you have the short-term bilateral and power exchange. The rest 2% falls under the DSM, which is deviation schedule mechanism, and 90% in case you take medium term under long term, this total constitutes around 90%. Maybe the 5 to 6% is under medium term, rest 85% is under long term. And you also have a banking mechanism in place where one discom can bank power when it does not need with another discom which needs its power for that month or for that period of time between 2 to 3 months or 4 months. This is also traded between discom to discom, either themselves or through a power trader. Long term in India is currently done by discoms under competitive bidding mechanism, and that does not include power traders because power trading companies are not needed as per CRC for power trading of power under long term. So medium term power is procured through competitive bidding route and generally done through power trader. We will see in details how long-term, medium-term, and short-term bilateral process takes place in the in the upcoming slides. So this gives a pretty good idea. This slide gives an idea on the various avenues of power procurement as well as in present power market structure. What is the percentage in percentage terms? What is the pie chart of the various avenues present in front of the discoms? Now we will see in details how medium-term and long-term power procurement is done in India by the DISCOMs. Now you already now know that the long-term power contracts are more than 7 to 25 years, typically 25 years PPAs, where you apply for a 25 years long-term open access to use the national grid. Also, in case the DISCOMs are signing medium-term contracts, the duration is between 1 to 5 years, typically 5 years PPAs, and you apply for MTOA for more than 3 months to 5 years. Now, discoms have been mandated to now under the after the Electricity Act, the discoms are mandated to procure their power through competitive bidding route under Section 63 of the Electricity Act. So they can no more do long-term power procurement under MOU route. So they have to do it through competitive bidding process, and once that is done, that has to be ratified by the State Electricity Regulatory Commission. Also, there is a provision where the discoms can sign long-term PPAs with the discoms under MOU route, which is only for the hydro projects. It can be procured under a cost plus basis, but it is subjected to fulfillment of certain conditions. So cost plus basis means we will see in our next series of presentations how tariff is determined. So there are basically two components. One is variable cost and there is fixed cost. So in under cost plus regime, the anything more than what you are incurring as a cost under your variable cost is generally passed on to the tariff by the State Electricity Regulatory Commissions once you apply for ratification of your tariff through a tariff order. So that has been that provision is there under hydro projects. So now under we will see what are the various ways to procure power under long-term power procurement and medium-term power procurement. Now, under long-term power procurement, there are two ways where the discoms can procure power. One is through competitive bidding process, which is under section 63, where they do a competitive bidding. It could be online bidding, it could be offline, and whatever will be the lowest tariff, the discom call for a tender, and whosoever quotes the lowest tariff wins it, and the discom signs a PPA of 25 years with the generator. Under section 62 regulated tariff model, here the State Electricity Regulatory Commission or the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission determines the tariff of the project. So what happen is if you are a generator and you want to sell power to a discom under section 62, then you go to the respective states regulatory commission and you give your costs and everything, and the regulatory commission will determine your tariff at which the PPAs would be signed with the discoms. But now now most of in most of the cases of this discoms in India, a majority of the cases is under section 63. Now under section 63 also you have two kind of models. There are two models, DBFOT and DBFOP, FOO. So DBFOT is design, build, finance, operate and transfer. So here the discom comes with a specific location. They define the fuel which will be specified. So if you take for example any thermal power plant, so the state discom defines where the project would be located, The discom generally purchase, the state government generally provide the land for those projects. They also define the fuel, if it is coal-based or thermal, it's a wind or oil, or it's a solar plant. They define the type of fuel, and the developer or the generator needs to design it, build it, finance the project, operate and transfer it at a later stage to the state government. In the second case, which is DBFOO, the generator or the developer has to design, build, finance, and operate and own the project. They will not transfer it to the state government. They will operate and own this project for the next 25 years. And here, in these cases, where we see majority of the solar tenders which are currently coming under the ISTS in gigawatt scale, they are not specifying the location and fuel. Of course, these are wind or solar, they are saying it, but in these cases, DBFOO, the central regulator or the central government or the state government do not give any specific input as location and fuel. So they will just say that I'm going to do a competitive bidding for say 500 megawatt of power, and whosoever quotes the lowest will win this, and any generator can come and quote there a tariff where there is no uh, boundary condition of location and fuel. So that comes under DBFOO. Now, under medium-term power procurement, it is generally done on a competitive bidding process, through a competitive bidding process, and it is generally on a FOO basis, which is you finance, operate, and own the project. And here the location, here also the location, fuel are not specified. So generally, why it is not designed and built is because these projects are generally operating units which are already running, and they might have run through their life of long-term PPAs. They are now free. They are on merchant basis. They could be power plants which are running on merchant basis. They can participate in these medium power procurement contracts, and they only need to operate and own these projects, and they need to quote the tariff. Generally, these are also no, not on a fixed cost and variable cost basis. These are also a lump sum power tariff, which we see in medium term power procurement. However, in long term power procurement, the basically the thermal and hydro, you have a two-part tariff structure, whereas for wind and solar, it's a single part tariff. We'll go into more into how tariff gets calculated in our second series of this power management course. So now we will see how short-term power procurement is done. Now, MOP issued a guidelines on short-term power procurement in the year 2016, where MSTC, which is Metal Scrap Trading Company, is appointed as the agency to develop the portal for which is launched on 1st April 2016 for procurement of short-term power by the state discoms. Now, the procurement of power by the discoms or its authorized representatives shall be done through e-bidding portal, and these e-bidding portal are followed by reverse auction. So whosoever suppose for example Punjab state wants 500 megawatt of power, so they will float this tender under the MSTC portal, and suppose there are 7 8 generating stations who can bid in this tender either themselves or through some power trading company. They have to register in this portal, and then between them a reverse auction will start. So the bidder who is willing to participate in the e-bidding shall have to pay a requisite fee of 500 rupees per megawatt per requisition for the total capacity sought by the utility for that particular requisition to PFCCL, which is Power Finance Corporation Limited. Procurer to invite bids based on their requirement, subject to minimum quantity. Bidder to offer constant quantum throughout the contract period. So now we'll see what are the bid submission requirement and the commercial terms and condition. So in the bid submission, you have to define the delivery point. It could be the state or regional periphery of procurer, which could be a state, and shall be the interconnection point of the seller with the STU, which is the intrastate transmission unit. You also need to submit an EMD, earnest money deposit, in the form of bank guarantee at the rate of 30,000 per megawatt per month, which is the present rate. You also need to submit a CPG, which is contract performance guarantee, And uh, here I am saying that in U means the generator. So the generator needs to submit EMD, and then the generator needs to submit CPG by successful bidder, which is at the rate of 2 lakhs per megawatt per month. So if it's a 6 months contract period and you are quoting for 100 megawatt, you have to pay 2 lakhs multiplied by 100 megawatt per multiplied by 6 months as contract performance guarantee. You also have to define the force majeure clauses, which are generally standardized. Change in law is also included. Billing cycle is defined. Compensation clause is defined, which is 85% at the rate of 20% of tariff. And you also have to define the generator has to define the payment security mechanism. So these all terms and conditions are defined under the bid submission requirement. Once the reverse auction takes place, then the bid evaluation takes place, where an event shall comprise of two parts, which is e-bidding and reverse auction. So an event can have multiple requisitions. Bidder can participate in any one of the available multiple requisition. That means it could be like tender for peak power, it could be tender for RTC power. You can participate, the generator can participate either in peak or either in RTC or both. A bidder can submit only one bid against each requisition. A bidder to inform the minimum threshold quantum which bidder is willing to supply to the procurer, which would be considered for allocation of power. So before the reverse auction start, you have to submit all the fees and you have to define, suppose the bidding is for 500 megawatt and you only want to participate at for 50 megawatt, you would be allowed for quoting your tariff only for 50 megawatt, not more than that. So that would be your minimum threshold quantum. After opening of the price bid, if the total quantity is greater than twice the requisition quantity, the highest bidder will be eliminated, provided total quoted quantity after elimination is not less than or equal to twice the requisition quantity. The reverse auction will start within 120 minutes, that means 2 hours of opening of the price bid, and it will continue for the next 120 minutes, which is next 2 hours. RA will be of reverse auction will be of 120 minutes and shall be followed by auto extension of 10 minutes if there is a tie. Auto extension will continue till there is a period of 10 minutes during which no price bid is received which is lower than the prevailing lowest price bid. The bidders, which are the generators, can reduce their tariff by minimum 1 paisa per unit and can increase the quantum by 1 megawatt, subject to the bank guarantee limits. After the reverse auction, the bidder would be issued LOI based on the ranking of the reverse auction up to the requisition quantum. In case two or more bidders quote same tariff during the reverse auction, the time of submission of bid will be decided factor for their ranking. So whosoever submits the bid first will be treated as the winning candidate. In case the selected bidder is allocated quantity less than its minimum threshold quantity, bidder shall have option to exit without forfeiting the EMD. So if you see the timelines of the total short-term power procurement through the DEEP portal or MSTC portal, which you say, the RFP takes, if you consider the publication of RFP as the zero date, the RFP submission needs to be done within 4 days. Technical bids gets open on the fifth day, between 5 days. Clarification from bidder is 6 days. Opening of financial bid and start of reverse auction is on the 8th day. Issuance of LOI is on the 9th day, signing of PPA is on the 10th day, opening of LC is prior to the supply of power. So all the things would be completed. You can say that the whole opening of the things and the RA will take place from this phase, and before that is all on the publication of RFP, submission of RFP, and opening of the technical bids and clarification from bidder. Now, one more way of procurement of power is through energy banking, which I said earlier. So it is generally a transaction between two discoms or utility. It is not done on any bidding process. It is generally done on MOU or negotiated route. Uh, this entire cycle of power supply and return, that is, suppose one state sells supply power to the other state which need the power. So for example, one state which is surplus in few months wants to bank its power to some other state which need that power in those months, needs to complete this cycle That means the state which is surplus today needs to consume the power which he is banking to the deficit state today within the 1 year period. Then only it is known as energy banking. The cycle has to complete in 1 year. Also, the delivery point is in banking transaction is the regional periphery of the importing utility. The return of power is at a premium based on the market conditions, and the settlement rate incorporated to take care of shortfall in return of power. Settlement rate for short supply, settlement rate for short offtake needs to be defined in the banking contract. Now we will see some trends of how short-term power market is developing in India. If you see the last 10 years trend, we can see that out of the total generation, which is India's total generation in billion unit terms, the short-term transaction is around 10% of the total generation, and it is not growing much. Earlier it was like 9% of the total generation. On percentage term, it is remains almost constant, but in MU terms, it has grown from 66 billion units to 128 billion units over the, so it almost doubled. The short-term power procurement has almost doubled in the last 8 years. But in percentage term, it has been remaining around 10% of the total India's generation. So if you see the percentage of DSM in overall short-term market, it has come down from the 39% to now 19% of the total percentage of the total short-term market. So this shows that our grid has balanced a lot, and the UI has reduced. In terms of billion units, it is fairly like, though our short-term market has grown over the last 10 years, the UI has remained constant around 24 billion units in the last 10 years. Now, this is another important slide which shows the volume of electricity transacted through the trading licenses and power exchange. Now, you can see that the volume of power traded under the short-term power market and with under power trader is given in your green line, which is like around 40 billion units is traded through power trading companies under the short-term market. The power exchange has grown significantly from 2.7 billion units to now it's around 47 billion units. So the state discoms and the other generators are buying and selling power under power exchange significantly. And overall, the short-term market, which is the addition of power trading, the addition of the short-term bilateral plus power exchange is close to now 78 billion units, which was earlier only 24 billion units. So it has almost grown 3 times in the last 8 years, 10 years, sorry. Also, we see that the trend of the price of electricity transacted through traders and power exchange. So earlier in 2008-9, the prices of electricity through power exchange as well as through bilateral market was close to 7.5 rupees, which has now fallen down. The power exchange prices were the lowest, around 2 rupees 50 in the 2016-17, and it has again grown back to 345. And as I speak today in 2019 December, the prices average market clearing price is around 2 rupees 50 paisa again. So this has again come down, the PX prices. The bilateral prices, however, is now close to 3.5 rupees. One more reason for this high tariff is because of the delivery point. So generally the delivery point of power exchange is taken as regional periphery. However, the delivery point of these bilateral trades through power trader is at the state periphery. That's why you add the losses and charges. You minus the losses and charges from state to regional periphery, you can come down to price similar to this. These are the short-term power prices which are discovered under the Deep portal, which is the short-term bilateral portal. And you can see in the last 1 year, the price is hovering around 4 rupees in the short-term bilateral market. So friends, I hope you like this presentation today. Is the part 1 series where we discussed on how power procurement is done by the state discoms under the long term, medium term and short term market. In the next series, we will see how the tariff is determined under long term, medium term and short term. And in the final series, we will learn about how scheduling of power takes place and how congestion management is looked into. So stay tuned to my channel, subscribe to this channel and share it with your friends, share it with Education Institute, and give me a thumbs up if you like this presentation. And if you have any doubt, put it in your comment box. Thank you. Jai Hind.